Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Leon Graves. I am 38 years old, and I was finishing up some paperwork on my dining room table when my phone rang. It was a quiet Tuesday evening around 6:30. The late sunlight from Dallas in early fall was fading through the blinds, and I was already thinking about what to cook for dinner when her name lit up my screen. I answered on the second ring. I lifted the phone to my ear and heard it immediately. Office chatter in the background, printer noises, muted laughter, the shuffle of people wrapping up their day. My wife's voice came through a second later. "Hey, Leon," she said, a little too bright. "You busy?" Her tone snapped my attention into focus. It sounded casual, but there was a stiffness underneath it, like a script she had rehearsed a few times too many. "Just finishing some reports," I said. "What is going on at the office? It sounds like rush hour in there." She laughed lightly. "Oh, people talking about tonight's company party." She paused for half a beat. "Listen, about that party tonight." The way she dragged out the words made the hair on my arms stand up. "What about it?" I asked, setting my pen down slowly. I stared at the half-finished spreadsheet on the table, but my mind was no longer on numbers. She cleared her throat. "I have been thinking," she said, sounding overly relaxed. "And maybe it is better if you do not come." I leaned back in my chair. "Really? Why is that?" I kept my voice even, but a tightness formed in my chest. Jasmine did not invite me to many of her company events as it was, always with some explanation about how dull they were. To actually ask me not to come felt different. It felt intentional. "Well," she exhaled slowly, like she had been waiting for this question. "You know how Darnell works there now, right?" There it was. Darnell, her ex from college. A name that had been sliding into our conversations more and more, always wrapped in harmless packaging. "Darnell," I repeated. "Your ex from your sophomore year at Florida A&M University. That Darnell." She gave an awkward laugh. "Yes, that Darnell. It would just be weird having you both at the same event. Plus, I am really trying to make a good impression on senior leadership tonight. You know how important this promotion is for me." I stared at the stack of folders in front of me without seeing them. "When did Darnell start working at your company?" I asked. I kept my tone mild, but my brain had already shifted gears. "Oh, a few months ago. Maybe 3, she answered quickly. I mentioned it before. No, she had not. I would have remembered. 3 months, I repeated. I thought about the past 3 months. Jasmine working late more often. New clothes showing up in her side of the closet. A different perfume that lingered on her long after she came home. More evenings where she took calls in the other room and closed the door behind her. Anyway," she added briskly, "it is just going to be boring corporate stuff. Speeches, networking, all that. You would hate it." I watched the second hand on the wall clock tick forward, each click louder than it had any right to be. "You know what?" I said finally. "You are absolutely right. I should stay home and let you do your networking without any distractions." Her relief came through the phone like a physical thing. "Thank you for understanding. You are the best." Her voice softened with genuine gratitude, which somehow made it worse. "No problem," I replied. "What time do you think you will be home?" "Oh, these things always run long," she said. "I will probably be late. Do not wait up." We said our goodbyes, and she hung up. I sat there for a moment, listening to the silence of the house, then turned back to my laptop and opened the email that had been sitting in my inbox since Monday morning, the one from Brandt Communications. It was from the executive office at Brandt Communications, the company that had just finalized its acquisition of the firm where I had worked for the last 7 years. The subject line read, "Annual Celebration Agenda and Special Recognition." Inside was the schedule for Wednesday evening's company celebration at a downtown Dallas hotel, along with a formal note. "We are thrilled to introduce our new regional director to the team at tomorrow evening's celebration. Your attendance as our surprise guest of honor is specifically requested." I read it again, slowly. The promotion Jasmine thought I was still waiting to hear about, it had already happened. The company she worked for had been acquired by the firm, where I had been quietly negotiating my new position as regional director for the past 2 months. There were a few things my wife did not know about my week. My eyes lingered on the words regional director. I had planned to surprise her over dinner that night, to tell her that her husband was now technically 3 levels above her in the corporate hierarchy. But that phone call had changed everything. I picked up my phone and dialed the number listed in the email. After 2 rings, a calm professional voice answered. Good evening. This is the office of Mr. Raymond Franklin, Chief Executive Officer of Brand Communications. How may I help you? This is Leon Graves, I said, the new regional director. I am calling regarding tomorrow evening's event. Her tone brightened instantly. Of course, Mr. Graves. We are very excited to host you. I will be attending as planned, I said. However, I have one request. Could you ensure that I am seated at the executive table, near the podium? I believe my wife works in your marketing department. It would be nice to surprise her. Absolutely, Mr. Graves, she replied. We will make sure everything is arranged perfectly. Thank you, I said. I appreciate it. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. The corners of my mouth lifted into a slow, deliberate smile. Jasmine wanted to impress senior leadership without distractions. She was about to get exactly what she asked for, just not in the way she expected. I spent the rest of the evening pulling suits from my closet and laying them across the bed. Charcoal, navy, light gray. I chose the navy suit with the subtle pinstripe, the one I had bought for high-level client meetings. I paired it with a crisp white shirt, an Italian silk tie, and polished black shoes. First impressions mattered, especially when you were meeting your new team and your unfaithful spouse at the same time. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of sharp clarity that sometimes comes before a storm. I woke up before Jasmine, made coffee, and set my laptop on the kitchen island. The house was quiet. The only sound was the gentle drip of the coffee maker. I did what any reasonable person in my position would do. I pulled up my new employee portal and started doing research. I typed in Darnell and watched the directory populate. There he was, Darnell Brooks, Marketing Coordinator, Brand Communications. Hired 4 months ago, not 3 like Jasmine had claimed. His profile photo showed a clean-cut man in his early 30s with a carefully trimmed beard and an easy smile that probably played well in focus groups. I switched to LinkedIn. His public profile confirmed the timeline. Unemployed for 6 months before joining Brand Communications. Hired 4 months ago. I sat back and thought about when Jasmine had started working late more often. The dates lined up uncomfortably well. I clicked deeper into the internal organizational chart. Marketing Department. There was Jasmine, listed as Jasmine Graves, Senior Marketing Associate. 2 lines below her, I saw Darnell Brooks, Marketing Coordinator. According to the seating chart attached to the directory, their desks were 2 spots apart in the same open office cluster. So much for, we do not really work together directly. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, and Jasmine walked into the kitchen wearing her robe, hair still messy from sleep. She yawned and smiled when she saw me. Morning, babe, she said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. You were up early. What are you looking at? I closed the laptop smoothly. Just work stuff, I said, turning to pour her a mug of coffee. There is fresh coffee. You are amazing, she said, accepting the mug. She took a sip and sighed. I am so nervous about tonight. This promotion could change everything for us. Us. She kept saying that, as if we were both walking the same path when she had clearly stepped off onto another one months ago. What time does the party start again? I asked casually. 7, she said. But I need to be there early to help set up. You know how these things are. I actually do not, I said mildly. You have never invited me to any company events before. They always sounded too boring, too political, too something. She gave a quick shrug. They are. You are not missing anything. It is just a lot of people pretending to enjoy small talk. I studied her face for a moment. Will Darnell be helping set up too? I asked. I kept my tone neutral, as if it were a random question. She paused, her cup halfway to her lips. For a split second, there was a flicker in her eyes. Then it was gone. I would not know, she said. We do not really work together directly. 2 desks away. Same department. A shared set of projects listed on the organizational chart. And yet somehow they did not really work together. Got it, I said. I finished my coffee and pushed my chair back. Well, I will find something to keep me busy tonight. Maybe I will finally catch up on that series you hate. Perfect, she said. She smiled, but did not reach her eyes. I should start getting ready. I want to look professional, you know. She disappeared upstairs, and I heard the shower start a moment later. While she got ready, I opened my laptop again. I scrolled through internal memos, conference room booking logs, and the company calendar. I did not have time for a deep audit, but I had enough access to see a pattern. Recurring late evening conference room reservations tied to the marketing department, many of them booked under Darnell's name. When Jasmine came back down an hour later, the transformation was striking. Her makeup was perfect, subtle but polished. Her hair was styled in soft waves. She wore a black fitted dress I had never seen before, hugging her curves in a way that was far more cocktail than corporate. The neckline dipped just low enough to draw attention, and the hemline rode just high enough to make a statement. I raised an eyebrow. New dress. She turned slowly, letting the fabric catch the light. Do you like it? She asked. I wanted to look sharp tonight. First impressions on senior leadership, remember. It is definitely memorable, I said. It was also exactly the kind of dress she used to wear back in college when we went out to parties. The kind of dress she wore when she wanted to impress someone specific. I remembered her saying once that Darnell always told her she looked incredible in black. She glanced at the clock. I should go, she said. I need to meet my team and run through my presentation one more time. She grabbed her bag and slid on a pair of heels that matched the dress too perfectly to be an afterthought. What time are you leaving the office? I asked. I have no idea, she replied, already halfway to the door. These events go on forever. Do not wait up. The door closed behind her, and the house felt larger and emptier than usual. I waited 30 minutes, then picked up my phone and dialed the main number for brand communications. A receptionist answered on the second ring. Brand communications, good afternoon. How may I help you? This is Leon Graves, I said. I have a question about tonight's event. I am calling regarding the marketing department. Are they still planning to review presentations this evening before the celebration? Oh no, sir, she said. The marketing team finished their preparation on Monday. Tonight is just the celebration. No work, just recognition and networking. Thank you, I said. That is very helpful. I ended the call and set my phone down. The pieces on the board were all moving into place. There was no reason for Jasmine to arrive 2 hours early for presentation prep that had already been completed. By 6:30, it was time for me to get ready for my own party. I showered, shaved carefully, and put on the navy suit. I tied my silk tie with deliberate precision and slipped into my polished shoes. The man in the mirror looked exactly like what he was, a regional director about to be introduced to his new team. Also a husband about to expose a lie without raising his voice. I practiced my expression for when I saw Jasmine across the room. Calm surprise, polite curiosity, nothing dramatic. I would look like a man who had simply stumbled into an interesting coincidence. Then I picked up my keys and headed out. The drive to the hotel downtown took 20 minutes, traffic light for a weeknight. It was enough time to imagine several possible scenes. None of them ended well for Jasmine. The hotel was one of those glass and steel towers that lit up the Dallas skyline at night. I pulled into valet parking and handed over my keys. The young valet glanced from my car to my suit and straightened up slightly. Enjoy your evening, sir, he said. I intend to, I replied, and headed toward the entrance. Inside, the lobby was all marble floors, high ceilings, and soft lighting. A grand chandelier hung overhead, catching reflections from the polished stone. Through a set of open double doors, I could see into the ballroom. Round tables covered in white linens, centerpieces glowing with candles, and at least 200 people already mingling. A jazz quartet played near one corner, their smooth sound drifting through the room as waiters moved between guests with trays of champagne and appetizers. I stepped into the ballroom and glanced around. Before I could fully take it in, a tall, silver-haired black man with a commanding presence spotted me and headed my way. His smile was broad and practiced, but his handshake was firm and genuine. Mr. Graves, he said, welcome. I am Raymond Franklin, Chief Executive Officer of Brand Communications. It is good to finally meet you in person. Mr. Franklin, I said, returning the handshake. It is a pleasure. The event looks impressive. We like to celebrate our people when we can, he said. Come, let me introduce you to some of the leadership team before we begin. He gestured toward the front of the room, where a long table was set up on a small platform near the podium. We have you seated at the executive table. Perfect view of everything. Excellent, I said. I'm looking forward to meeting the team. As we walked, he introduced me to a series of department heads and senior managers. Regional sales, operations, finance, legal. Handshakes, names, job titles. Everyone was professional and friendly, clearly energized by the recent acquisition and expansion. I gave each person my full attention, but part of my mind remained fixed on one mission: finding Jasmine. "The acquisition has been fantastic for morale," said a woman in a navy dress with a neat bob haircut. She introduced herself as Denise Howard, Director of Human Resources. "People are seeing new opportunities, new paths for advancement. It feels like the company is entering a new chapter." "I'm glad to hear that," I said. "My goal is to make sure this next chapter is as strong and transparent as possible." Denise nodded. That word, transparency, is exactly what people want. As we moved toward the executive table, I finally spotted the marketing department, gathered at a cluster of tables about 6 rows back from the stage on the left side of the room. The position was ideal. They had clear sight lines to the podium, but it would be easy for someone at the front to observe them without being instantly obvious. I scanned the table, and then I saw her. Jasmine stood near the bar, talking with a small group of colleagues. That black dress looked even more striking under the ballroom lights. It was elegant, yes, but definitely more cocktail attire than conservative corporate wear. The neckline dipped, the fabric clung, and her heels added just enough height to change her posture. She was laughing at something, head tilted back in a way that used to be reserved for me. Standing beside her was Darnell. In person, he looked slightly younger than his profile photo suggested. Early 30s, clean-cut, dark suit that was probably the nicest thing in his closet. His posture was relaxed, confident, practiced. They were not touching, but the space between them told its own story. That small invisible bubble that forms between two people who are used to leaning into each other. "That is our marketing team over there," Mr. Franklin said, following my gaze. "Talented group. Very creative." "I'm sure they are," I replied. I watched as Darnell leaned in, said something close to Jasmine's ear, and she smiled, resting a hand on his forearm for a second too long. On paper, I had numbers, dates, and logs. In person, I had body language stolen between seconds, and the kind of intimacy that did not belong between married coworkers. The tour of introductions continued. I met the chief technology officer, the head of legal, the director of operations for the region that would soon report directly to me. We discussed integration plans, projected growth, and expansion targets. I responded in kind, present and engaged, but my attention kept drifting back toward that table, to the way Jasmine and Darnell gravitated toward each other whenever conversations shifted around them. "Shall we take our seats?" Mr. Franklin asked, checking his watch. "I want to start the formal program in about 10 minutes. "Of course," I said. The executive table sat on a slightly raised platform at the front of the room, angled so that we faced the audience. From my seat near the podium, I had an unobstructed view of nearly every table. The marketing department was still in perfect view. Jasmine's back was to me now. She had no idea I was in the same building, let alone at the head table. A waiter offered me a glass of wine, and I accepted it. I took a slow sip and let my eyes wander across the room. From this vantage point, it was obvious that Jasmine and Darnell were deep in conversation. Their bodies leaned slightly toward each other, their heads tilted in alignment, their gestures small and contained, like an island in the middle of the round table. Everyone else at their table seemed relaxed, unaware that 2 of their colleagues were balancing on the edge of a very different kind of evening. "Lovely event," said a smooth voice to my right. I turned to see a poised woman taking the seat next to me. She was in her mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a quiet confidence. "I am Camille Brandt, Vice President of Strategy, and Raymond's daughter." "Good to meet you, Camille," I said. "Your father certainly knows how to put on a celebration." "He believes people work harder when they feel seen," she replied. "This is his way of saying, 'I see you.' Recognition matters," I said. "So does accountability." Her eyes flicked toward me curiously, as if she heard the layered meaning beneath the words. Then the lights dimmed slightly, and Mr. Franklin rose from his seat and stepped up to the podium. The conversation at every table faded into a hush. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. We stand at the beginning of an exciting new chapter for Brandt Communications. The acquisition of Graves and Turner Consulting has brought new talent, new ideas, and new opportunities for growth." There was a ripple of applause. Jasmine's table clapped along. From behind, she looked relaxed, unaware of the personal chapter that was about to be added to this corporate narrative. Mr. Franklin spent several minutes acknowledging the hard work of various teams. Sales achievements, successful campaigns, new client acquisitions, operational improvements. Polite applause followed each name. When he mentioned outstanding performance in securing a major new client and read Darnell's name, the marketing table burst into enthusiastic clapping. Jasmine clapped harder than most, her shoulders rising with pride. When the applause died down, Mr. Franklin shifted his tone. "Tonight," he said, "I also have a very special introduction to make." He glanced briefly in my direction, then back to the audience. 3 months ago, we began serious conversations about expanding our regional operations across several states. We knew we needed someone with a proven track record in leadership, strong industry relationships, and a clear vision for sustainable growth. I watched Jasmine's posture. She seemed half engaged, still talking quietly with Darnell as her fingers traced the stem of her champagne glass. She had no idea how directly this next part of the speech involved her. "I am thrilled to introduce the person who will be leading that effort," Mr. Franklin continued. "This individual will oversee operations across 3 states, including the work many of you are doing right here in Dallas." The room grew still, every pair of eyes turning toward the podium. "Please join me in welcoming our new regional director," he said. He turned toward me with an inviting gesture. I rose from my chair, buttoned my jacket, and stepped forward. The tables closest to the front turned first, faces lighting with curiosity and polite interest. The applause began near the executive table and rolled backward through the room like a wave. As I walked toward the podium, I let my gaze sweep across the audience until it settled deliberately on the marketing section. Jasmine was still facing her table, mid-sentence, as the applause grew louder. Then someone at her table nudged her and nodded toward the stage. She turned casually at first, her head turning, shoulders aligning, eyes lifting toward the podium. The moment her gaze landed on me, everything changed. The color drained from her face so quickly it was almost visible from where I stood. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed without sound. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, then widened again as recognition slammed into her. Darnell followed her gaze. His expression shifted in slow motion, mild confusion, then recognition, then dawning horror. He stopped clapping. His hands dropped to the table, fingers splayed, as if he needed something solid to anchor himself. The rest of their colleagues continued applauding, smiling, unaware that 2 of their teammates had just watched their world tilt. I smiled at the room, steady and professional, and took the podium. "Thank you for the warm welcome," I said. "I am very excited to be here and to be joining such a talented organization." My voice sounded calm, even. Inside, everything was also calm. I had had a full day to prepare for this moment. "I know that change can be challenging," I continued, letting my gaze return to the marketing tables. "I believe in transparency and open communication. Over the next several weeks, I will be meeting with department heads and team leads so that we can align on goals and expectations." Jasmine's champagne glass was trembling in her hand. She tightened her grip and brought it to the table, placing it down carefully. Her chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. She looked like she had forgotten how to blink. "I look forward to getting to know each of you," I said, "not just in terms of your performance metrics, but as professionals with ambitions, challenges, and unique contributions to make. I believe in clear expectations, measurable results, and professional conduct that reflects well on our company values." I let that last phrase linger as I scanned the marketing table again. Darnell sat perfectly still, his eyes locked on me. I could see the movement of his throat as he swallowed hard. Jasmine's hand had moved to her necklace, fingertips rubbing the small pendant in quick repetitive motions. It was a habit she had when she was extremely nervous, one I had seen before job interviews and during tense family conversations. "For now," I concluded, "please enjoy this evening. Tonight is about celebration. Tomorrow, we begin building the future together." The applause rose again, enthusiastic and loud. People stood at some of the front tables. My colleagues at the executive table smiled, some nodding approvingly. Mr. Franklin shook my hand and whispered, "Excellent presence, before inviting people to come forward and greet me. For the next 15 minutes, I stood near the front of the room greeting a steady stream of employees, senior managers, team leads, long-term staff. There were congratulations, expressions of excitement, questions about strategy and regional plans. I responded to each with focus, always returning to the same core message: collaboration, accountability, transparency. Through it all, every few moments, my eyes drifted back to the marketing table. Jasmine was leaning back in her chair now, as if the weight of the evening was pressing her into it. Her expression had shifted from shock to something closer to panic. Her lips moved as she whispered something to Darnell, who shook his head, then nodded, then shook his head again, looking like a man who had forgotten how to breathe normally. "Congratulations," said a voice beside me. I turned to see a stocky black man in his 40s extend his hand. "I am Brian Little, Senior Manager in Operations. We have heard good things about your work." "Thank you, Brian," I said, shaking his hand. "I'm looking forward to working together." "We are excited about the expansion," he said. "There's a lot of potential in this region." "There is," I agreed. My gaze flicked briefly toward the marketing table, then back to him. "I believe if we maintain high standards and consistent accountability, we can do something special here." "I like that," he said. "Accountability. People work differently when they know expectations are clear." "Yes," I said. "They certainly do." A few minutes later, Denise Howard from Human Resources approached. "Mr. Graves," she said, smiling warmly. "Welcome again. This position has been a long time coming. Will you be relocating to Dallas permanently?" "Actually, I already live here," I said, pitching my voice just a little louder than necessary. "My wife works in the marketing department, so this position is perfect for keeping us close to home." Denise's smile widened. "That is wonderful," she said. "It is always nice when couples can work in the same organization." "I'm sure she is very proud of you tonight." I allowed myself the smallest pause. "I'm sure she is," I said. "We have not had a chance to fully discuss it yet. Tonight has been full of surprises." Across the room, I saw Jasmine's head snap up, watching me with wide, disbelieving eyes. The line of people coming to greet me slowly thinned. When there was finally a break, I excused myself from the executive table and began making my way through the crowd toward the marketing section. I moved deliberately, stopping periodically to speak with employees whose name tags I recognized from earlier memos. Jasmine and Darnell watched my progress the entire time. Even from a distance, they looked like two people seated at their own private funeral. By the time I reached their table, most of the group had settled back into normal conversation. Laughter, clinking glasses, discussions of project deadlines, and office gossip. The only tension at the table sat in the stiff line of Jasmine's shoulders and the tight set of Darnell's jaw. "Good evening, everyone," I said, addressing the table with an easy smile. "I'm looking forward to working with the marketing team." A chorus of polite greetings followed. Several people stood to shake my hand. "Welcome," said one woman. "We are excited about the direction the company is taking." Another added, "The speech was excellent, very clear." "Thank you," I said. "Clarity is important to me." I let that rest for a moment before turning slightly. "And you must be my wife's colleague, Darnell," I said, extending my hand. "She has mentioned you." Darnell wiped his palm on his pants leg before taking my hand. His grip was damp with sweat. "Nice to meet you, sir," he said carefully. "Congratulations on the promotion." "Thank you," I replied. "I understand you are fairly new to the team as well. How have you found the transition so far?" "It has been educational," he said. His eyes slid quickly toward Jasmine, then back to me. "A lot to learn, but everyone has been helpful." "I'm sure they have," I said gently. "Change often reveals a lot about people, does it not?" Jasmine forced a laugh. "Honey, this is such a surprise," she said. "You did not mention you were interviewing here." She reached out and touched my arm for the benefit of anyone watching, trying to slide into the role of supportive spouse. I turned to her fully. "Did I not?" I asked. "That is interesting. I thought we had discussed my career plans at length. Perhaps I was mistaken about how much communication we actually had." Her smile faltered for a second. "Well, everything has been moving so fast," she said. "Things have just been hectic." I nodded. "Yes, they have." I gestured lightly around the table. "You mentioned that Darnell was your ex from college, and that he had joined your company a few months ago. But according to his personnel file, He has been here for 4 months. The timing is interesting, is it not? The table grew a little quieter. One of her colleagues glanced between us, sensing the tension without understanding it. It is just coincidence, Jasmine said quickly. The job market is unpredictable. People move around. Coincidence, I repeated. Like how you needed to arrive early tonight for presentation prep. But according to the front desk, the marketing team completed their preparation on Monday. I suppose that is another coincidence. The air around the table thickened. The light conversation died away completely as people began to pick up on the undercurrent. Darnell shifted in his seat. I think there might have been some miscommunication, he said. Sometimes administrative details get mixed up. It happens. You are absolutely right about miscommunication, I said, looking directly at him. It is amazing how much clarity a change in perspective can provide. I straightened slightly. In any case, I continued in a neutral tone. I will be conducting individual performance reviews for all departmental staff over the next 2 weeks. I am particularly interested in understanding team dynamics, professional relationships, and how everyone's conduct aligns with company values. Darnell's throat bobbed again. Of course, sir, he said. Everyone wants to maintain professional standards. Everyone should, I agreed. Although some people seem to have different personal definitions of what constitutes appropriate workplace behavior. Jasmine stood abruptly, her chair scraping lightly against the floor. Excuse me, she said, voice tight. I need to use the restroom. Of course, I said mildly. Take your time. We will be here when you get back. She hurried away, her heels clicking across the marble floor toward the hallway near the restrooms. I watched her retreating figure for a moment, then turned back to the table. Most of her colleagues had shifted into strained side conversations, trying to give the appearance of normalcy. Only Darnell remained directly engaged with me. So, Darnell, I said, sliding into Jasmine's empty chair. Tell me about your relationship with my wife. His eyes widened. We are colleagues, he said immediately. Just colleagues. We work in the same department, but that is all. Just colleagues, I repeated. That is interesting, considering you arrive at work together most mornings, take lunch breaks at the same time, and stay late together several times a week. According to security logs, the conference room on the 3rd floor has seen quite a bit of evening use from the two of you. Those must be some very intense professional meetings. The color drained from his face. Those were work-related meetings, he said weakly. We were brainstorming campaign ideas, going over client pitches. That conference room was just available when we needed a quiet space. I have been in management for 15 years, I said quietly. I know what work-related meetings look like. I also know what other kinds of meetings look like. He had no answer. His gaze dropped to the table, his fingers twisting the edge of his napkin. Now, I could make this complicated. I continued in a conversational tone. I could involve human resources. I could request security footage. I could initiate a formal investigation into workplace conduct, inappropriate relationships, and misuse of company time and space. Darnell shook his head quickly. That is not necessary, he said. This is all a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I said, was your assumption that I would never find out, or that I would not be in a position to do anything when I did. So here is what is going to happen. I looked directly at him. You're going to finish your drink, thank your colleagues for a pleasant evening, and go home. Tomorrow morning, you're going to submit your 2 weeks' notice. You will cite personal reasons or a desire for a career change. Human resources will accept it, and you will transition out quietly. He stared at me, stunned. Sir, I continued, cutting him off. We can do this the hard way. I open a formal investigation. I have human resources review every conference room reservation, every security camera angle, every email sent after hours from company devices. I make this public, official, and permanent. Which option do you prefer? His shoulders slumped. I will submit my notice, he said softly. Good, I said. I rose from the chair. Use tonight to think carefully about how you will explain this sudden change to the next employer who asks why you left a growing company during a major expansion. For your sake, I hope you are better at answering that question than you were at hiding this affair. I left him sitting there and walked toward the hallway where Jasmine had disappeared. The hallway outside the restrooms was quieter, the sound of the jazz quartet and conversation dimmed by the distance. Jasmine stood near a mirror by the entrance to the ladies' room, pressing a tissue under her eyes to catch the beginning of smeared mascara. When she saw my reflection approaching, she froze. Then she turned slowly to face me. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice trembled, but there was a trace of defiance under the fear. "Yes," I replied. "We definitely do." We moved to a quiet corner near the hotel's business center, away from the main party. A pair of leather chairs sat near a window overlooking the city. Jasmine sank into one of them, shoulders rounding as if the weight of the situation had finally settled on her. I remained standing for a moment, then sat across from her. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. I folded my hands together. "Known what specifically?" I asked. "That you have been lying about working late? That Darnell is not just some random ex who coincidentally appeared in your department? That the two of you have been using conference rooms for more than brainstorming sessions? Or are you asking when I realized my wife was having an affair?" She flinched at the word. "It is not what you think," she said quickly. "Leon, please, you are jumping to conclusions. I admit that I handled some things badly, but what I think," I interrupted, "is that you have been seeing your coworker for months. You have been lying to me about your schedule, hiding phone calls, changing your perfume, buying new clothes, and reworking your life around this man, all while looking me in the eye and telling me that everything is fine at home." Tears began to form along her lower lashes. "We never meant for it to happen," she whispered. "It just developed over time. We were working together, we started talking, and things got complicated. I was stressed. I felt unappreciated. And he was just there." "Things do not just develop," I said. "People make choices. You chose to stay late with him. You chose to meet in empty conference rooms. You chose to lie about preparation meetings and presentations. Every day, you had a choice. You made yours." She swallowed hard. "I know I messed up," she said. "I know I have hurt you. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can set boundaries. We have history, Leon. We have years together. We cannot just throw that away." "You are about 6 months too late to worry about throwing it away," I replied. "You ended our marriage when you decided that sneaking around with Darnell was more important than respecting our vows. Tonight just happens to be the moment when I get to see the evidence in person." She wiped at her cheeks, smearing her makeup slightly. "What happens now?" she asked. "Are you going to fire him? Are you going to humiliate me at work? Is that what you want?" "I'm not going to fire him," I said. "I've already told him to submit his resignation. I gave him the choice of leaving quietly or facing a formal investigation. He chose the quiet exit. That is between him and his conscience now." "You cannot do that," she said, eyes flashing briefly. "That is an abuse of power." "What you did with your coworker," I said evenly, "was an abuse of trust. I am simply making sure that someone who has shown poor judgment is no longer positioned to damage my organization. That is called leadership." She stared at me, the enormity of it finally settling. "You planned this," she said. "You knew I worked here when you took the job. You wanted to walk in tonight and catch us." "I accepted the regional director position because it was a strong career move," I said. "The fact that it happened to be at the company where you work was a factor, yes. It gave me clarity about your behavior in a way I did not have before. The rest of this, you planned this. Every lie, every late night, every excuse. Those were your decisions." She pressed her fingers to her temples. "So what? You're going to make my life miserable until I quit." I let out a humorless laugh. "You still think you are the one holding the cards," I said. "Let's talk about reality. You work in marketing. Your new regional director is your husband, who you have been cheating on. Your affair partner will suddenly resign within 2 weeks of my arrival. How do you imagine that is going to feel in the office?" Her gaze drifted toward the ballroom. "People will talk," she said softly. "They always do. People are not stupid," I said. "They will connect the dots. They will remember the way you and Darnell behaved at events. They will notice the timing. They will see how strained things become between us in every professional setting. Your reputation will not survive that kind of pressure for long." "I could transfer to another department," she said weakly. "Maybe to sales or operations. Different floor, different team. We would not have to interact that much at work." "You try," I said. "But this building is not big enough for the tension you would be living with. Every time there is a meeting involving leadership, you would be sitting across the room from me, knowing that I know exactly who you chose over our marriage. Every time someone asked about your sudden distance from certain coworkers, You would wonder what story they had heard. She was quiet for a long moment. You want me to quit? She said finally. I want you to make adult decisions about the consequences of your actions, I replied. If you stay, you live with the professional fallout. If you leave, you get a clean start somewhere else where I am not your boss, and your betrayal is not common knowledge. That choice belongs to you. And our marriage, she asked in a small voice. Is that already decided too? The marriage where my wife respected me, told me the truth, and kept her vows ended months ago, I said. I'm just catching up to the reality you created. I have already contacted an attorney. We are meeting on Monday to begin divorce proceedings. Her eyes widened. You already talked to an attorney? I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up so she could see the text confirmation from Harold Jackson, my longtime attorney. I sent this message after I saw the conference room logs and the internal seating chart. I said, I decided then that I was done giving you the benefit of the doubt. Her face crumpled. Leon, please, she said. We have built a life together. The house, our plans, our families. We can work through this. People make mistakes. You did not make a single mistake, I said. You built a lifestyle. There is a difference. You had opportunity after opportunity to stop. You did not. You had opportunity after opportunity to be honest. You were not. Now I am making my own choices. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. What am I supposed to do? You will figure out, I said. You figured out how to juggle a full-time job, a marriage, and an affair for months without tripping over your own lies. You clearly have the ability to plan. Use that skill for something constructive. I glanced at my watch. I'm going back to the party. I have colleagues to meet and a region to lead. This is not fair, she said, tears streaming now. Fair, I repeated, turning back to her. Fair would have been you ending our marriage before you started sleeping with someone else. Fair would have been you telling me you were unhappy instead of running to the nearest convenient distraction. Fair would have meant respect. You chose something else. I took a breath. By the way, you told me you wanted to impress senior leadership tonight. You succeeded. Your new regional director is very impressed. Just not in the way you intended. I left her sitting in that leather chair, mascara streaking down her cheeks, and walked back toward the ballroom. The music was still playing, glasses were still clinking, and people were still laughing. The corporate celebration continued as if nothing had happened. That was the thing about personal disasters. They rarely stopped the rest of the world. For the rest of the evening, I did what I had come there to do professionally. I spoke with department heads about expansion plans and integration timelines. I listened to managers describe their team's strengths and challenges. I discussed budgets, projections, and key performance indicators. I built the foundation of trust that I would need as regional director. Several people noticed Jasmine's absence and asked politely whether she was all right. She was not feeling well, I said each time. She decided to go home and rest. It was technically true. She was not feeling well at all. The truth behind it was simply bigger than anyone in that room needed to know. At some point, I noticed that Darnell had disappeared as well. His chair sat empty at the marketing table, his glass half full. No one seemed particularly concerned. People came and went from tables throughout the evening, slipping out to take calls or leave early. His exit blended into the background noise of a corporate event. At the end of the night, Mr. Franklin walked me out to the valet stand. The air outside was cool, the city lights throwing reflections across the hotel's glass facade. You did very well tonight, he said, shaking my hand firmly. The team is excited. They respect confidence and clarity, and you brought both. Thank you, I said. I'm looking forward to building something meaningful here. I have complete confidence in your leadership, he said. If you need anything from us as you settle in, my door is open. I appreciate that, I replied. And thank you again for the opportunity. He glanced back toward the hotel entrance. I hope your wife feels better, he added. I'm sure she will adjust, I said. Sometimes transitions take more time for some people than for others. My car pulled up, and I slid into the driver's seat. As I drove home through the quiet Dallas streets, the adrenaline of the evening began to fade, replaced by a steady, solid certainty. My life had split into a before and after, and I had stepped firmly into the after. 3 weeks later, the dust had begun to settle. Darnell's resignation had been processed without incident. His official reason, as stated in his letter, was a desire to pursue new opportunities in another city. Human Resources accepted it, and word filtered through the company that he had moved to Houston to be closer to extended family. The truth did not follow him in any official documentation, but truth had a way of clinging to people regardless. Jasmine submitted her own resignation shortly afterward. She cited personal reasons and a need to explore new professional directions. There were soft emails from colleagues wishing her well and offering to keep in touch. I noticed that only a handful of those messages came from men. Most of the women in her department seemed more reserved, as if they had picked up on more than she realized. The divorce paperwork moved forward quickly. My attorney, Harold Jackson, handled the details with quiet efficiency. We agreed on a simple division of assets. I kept the house. She kept her car and a small savings account she had maintained separately. There were tense phone calls, a few emotional messages that I chose not to respond to, and one brief in-person meeting to sign final documents. When the judge's signature finalized the divorce, I did not feel triumph. I felt closure. A door had closed, locked from the other side, and I had no desire to open it again. The version of Jasmine I had loved existed in my memory, but the woman who had walked into that black dress and those conference rooms was a different person. My new position consumed much of my time, in a way that felt productive rather than distracting. The regional expansion plan moved ahead of schedule. I visited branch offices in nearby cities, met with local teams, and implemented new systems for performance tracking and communication. The staff responded well to structured expectations and clear leadership. Camille and I worked closely on strategy, her analytical perspective balancing my operational experience. Denise from Human Resources appreciated my insistence on fairness and professionalism. "It is refreshing," she said in one meeting, "to have someone in leadership who takes conduct as seriously as results." I did not tell her how personally I had learned that lesson. It was written into my life, not my resume. Some evenings, I stayed late at the office, watching the city lights from my corner window. The view of downtown Dallas at night was both beautiful and humbling. Streets full of strangers, each carrying their own secrets, their own betrayals, and their own choices. I thought about how easily a life could shift when someone decided that promises were optional. I did not regret the promotion. I did not regret confronting Jasmine. I did not regret ending the marriage. There was sadness, of course, and memory, and the echo of what could have been if different choices had been made. But regret is for mistakes you did not need to make. My only real choice had been whether to look away or to act. I had chosen to act. Over time, stories about Jasmine and Darnell faded from my daily thoughts. I still heard her name occasionally in family conversations or mutual acquaintances updates. "She is living in Atlanta for a while," one cousin mentioned. "She said she needed a change of scenery." I wished her no harm. I simply wanted distance. What stayed with me was not her face or his name, but the lesson underneath it all. When someone shows you who they truly are, you should believe them. Not the version they describe in late-night apologies, not the version you wish they could become, but the version they reveal through repeated choices. And when those choices cut against your own values, you owe it to yourself to respond in kind. So I focused on the future, on the team I was building, the region I was leading, the standards I was setting. I surrounded myself with people who valued integrity, who understood that trust was currency. I showed up every day determined to be the kind of leader and the kind of man whose actions would not crumble under scrutiny. The story of my marriage ended that night in the hotel, but my story did not. It continued in every decision I made afterward, in every boundary I enforced, in every room where I chose honesty over comfort. I walked forward with open eyes and a steady heart, fully aware that betrayal had crossed my path, but refusing to let it define the road ahead. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.